Hello and welcome to Mirror Fighting's Boxing Tonight, our quick-fire run-through of what you can expect from tonight's fight. My name is Martin Dobbin. I'm joined by my colleague, Rich Jones. Rich, we are live. Please do not swear. How are you this morning?
Yeah, not too bad. Looking forward to a good night of boxing tonight. You?
Can't complain. I'm still in Scotland, and unbelievably, for the 5th day in a row, it's still sunny. Who would have thought it? But I'm no Michael Fish. Let's focus on the boxing. Now, you say it's a good night of boxing. I'm not so sure. We only have the one card to run through, Frank Warren card in London, headlined by Liam Williams' defence of his British middleweight title against Andrew Robinson. Listen, I don't know. I don't want to be critical every single week, but this to me is a glorified takeover fight, which I accept we have to have in these times. But assuming Liam Williams is fit, I think he'll probably come through it all right.
Yeah, I think you're right. They are sort of glorified takeover fights. I think there's the hope is that we're going to get all these out of the way, and then hopefully, in a few months down the line, we're going to finally get all these big fights for after. All these guys that are having takeover fights now, you'd like to think will be in big fights, world title fights a few months down the line. I don't know about you. The only thing I'd say with Liam Williams, though, is he might not, if he is fit and on form, like he's always exciting to watch. He's had some really good stoppage wins the last few fights. I followed his career quite closely for a few years now from covering him back when I was at uni in Wales for the student newspaper, and he's always exciting to watch. So I think even if it's a one-sided affair, you're usually going to get fireworks when Liam Williams is involved. But I can see what you mean. It's probably a bit of a tick-over fight. You'd expect him to come through all right, I think.
For Andrew Robinson, he's got absolutely nothing to lose, really. He's fallen short probably whenever he has stepped up, most recently against Mark Heffron. But he's 36 now. Maybe he's getting a chance he would otherwise not have had Liam Williams gone on to fight for a world title. So we've got to assume he is definitely coming to this as in as good condition as he can. And if for any reason Liam Williams is not quite there, you're right, we could at least have a good fight. And you don't know at these times, there could be the slight possible chance of an upset. Yeah,
exactly. Who knows? And 20-1, by the sounds of it, you're keen on those odds. Or if Deck Taylor was here, he'd be back in the draw. I've got no doubt. But you never know. Like with lockdown, I think we haven't seen too many people that have come unstuck. But in terms of like lockdown and like the way everything's been, you never know how people are going to have prepared, how well they'll have been training, and I guess you don't know how everyone deals with the time out the ring differently, don't they? So I personally don't see Liam Williams having too many problems. But like you say, Andrew Robinson, no pushover, and he'll go in there with nothing to lose, I suppose. So. Yeah, not the most, not the biggest 50-50 of a main event, but it's some boxing and it'll be interesting to watch, I'm sure.
And very hard to see Liam Williams not, assuming he wins, going into a bigger fight in the future, whether it's against Demetrius Andrade, for whom he's mandatory, or if he vacates Jamie Munguia, maybe for the vacant title. So for Liam Williams, in his head, he just has to think, I know it's one more fight I maybe didn't really want, maybe didn't need it, but let's just get through it. And then, boxers must say it all the time, but really this time, the next one will be the big one.
Yeah, he's got to hope so. But the trouble is this one more fight. What can he really do against Andrew Robinson that's going to help put his name out there for the world title fight? He's still relying on someone to give him a shot, even though he's like all the belts are pretty much in America, aren't they? And he hasn't really got the biggest name in America, so it's a tricky one. Like, if he knocks Andrew Williams out in the first round in spectacular style, is it really going to push his case that much more for a world title? But he's done everything he can do now. He's just got to keep winning and hopefully gets that shot soon. And he's been looking dangerous at middleweight, so I'm sure it'd be interesting when he does finally get that step up. Do you think he's got it in him to win a world title if he gets that shot?
Do I, honestly? Can he win a world title? Yes, he could. Do I think he would win a world title? No, I don't. I think he's definitely improved. He's come. He sort of stepped up against Liam Smith in one of those fights, or two of those fights, which maybe surprised people at just how good he was. And he's rebuilt very well since then. But I think there are plenty of people who get a world title shot who don't deserve it. I think Liam Williams definitely deserves it. Whether or not he will, I wouldn't back him to step up though and actually take it. I think he's probably one of those fighters who ultimately will fall just short. But there's no shame in that.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully after this fight, we'll get to that and get to see whether he's got it in him. So fingers crossed on that front.
Indeed. And before Liam Williams and Andrew Robinson take to the ring, there is some heavyweight action, and heavyweight is the key word here. Nathan Gorman takes on Richard Lartey. Both men, well, of course, Gorman familiar to the British fans, but Lartey also familiar. Both men's last fight was against Daniel Dubois. Gorman went 5, Lartey went 4, but really the key point, I think, from yesterday's weigh-in, Richard, is Gorman is huge. 272 pounds, 15 pounds heavier than he was against Dubois. And I know they are different sports, but for some context, if he was in the UFC, he'd have weighed in half a stone over their heavyweight limit. They have a limit for heavyweights, and he would have been over it. Now, I know you can get good heavy and bad heavy. To me, not being an expert, he looks bad heavy.
Yeah, I'd agree. It does strike you as a case of someone who's just sort of not in great shape rather than someone who's deliberately put on a bit more weight to come in a bit heavier. That's what it seems like, especially after sort of lockdown, the difficulties that some fighters might have had training, stuff like that. I'm actually quite intrigued to see this fight, because if you'd have gone back sort of a year, 18 months ago, before Lartey, before both of them fought Dubois, it would have very much been a case of, oh, it's another win for Gorman. He's like a good prospect. He's coming through well. But then you sort of fast forward, and Gorman, obviously, the fight with Dubois was a lot more one-sided than people thought. Dubois looked brilliant in that fight. And Lartey actually probably gave Dubois the toughest test he's had. He came out swinging. He gave him a little bit of trouble. It was a bit of a tear-up for a few rounds before Dubois eventually got him out of there. So I think like I say, now with going off their last fights, it's quite an intriguing one. But like you say, I'm intrigued to see what sort of shape Gorman's in when he gets in the ring, because it didn't look like he was good heavy yesterday, to be honest.
I mean, he has had his problems. I know his son's been ill, but he, I believe, chose this fight, chose to come back at this time. And if you're going to do that, then I think it's your responsibility to therefore come back in shape. Now, as you say, maybe he'll surprise us, but for a man who is normally light on his feet for a big man, if you know what I mean, with fast hands, I'm not sure why that weight would be an advantage. Just in case you're wondering why we don't seem to have Richard Lartey's age, there's actually no record of it on the internet, so it's not a mistake. It's not a researcher's fault if we had one. No one's actually quite sure how old he is. But as you said, he did come out swinging against Dubois. There was that exchange. And I don't know, I mean, if there's going to be an upset tonight, I suspect it will be here, simply because it's the heavyweights, and simply because if Lartey lands and Gorman's not with it, then he could be gone.
It's a real crossroads as well. I know it's cliche, but it does feel like a bit of a crossroads now for Gorman, in terms of he was an undefeated prospect until he fought Dubois, and that was sort of a grudge match. He was always the underdog, but it was sort of a big cut, sort of the winner was going to leap up the levels, and obviously Gorman came out as the loser, and it feels like it's a bit of a crossroads in terms of which way is Gorman's career going to go. Is he going to sort of rebuild and go on to be sort of at the level below the elite and sort of hopefully step up one day, or is he going to sort of become maybe, you know, your sort of journeyman type heavyweight? It seems like quite a big starting point for his comeback in terms of which direction his career is going to go, really, it feels like to me.
Definitely, and there are plenty of, if he comes through this, I'm sure the first thing he'll probably mention is a rematch with Dubois, but let's just forget that. But there are domestic fights, you know, someone like a Dave Allen who's got his scheduled fight, but there are fights out there. Just because you might not be cream of the crop doesn't mean you have to just, you know, become a gatekeeper or a journeyman. There are plenty of fights out there. I just hope that he's taken this fight seriously enough that he's not going to come a cropper. And our final fight to look through is Willy Hutchinson, Scotland's next rising star, we think, against Jose Miguel Fandino. It looks like, I know Hutchinson has been sort of flitting between super middleweight and light heavyweight. He's coming just above the 168 pound super middleweight limit this time, so it looks like that's where he's going to settle, which if you can do that, then that's the sensible option. And actually, I'm sure he'll come through. But the interesting thing about Fandino was his last fight was against 45-year-old Sergio Martinez, the Sergio Martinez, former undisputed middleweight champion. So I think this does represent something of a step up. Fandino's only really lost it against decent fighters. And another chance for Hutchinson to show us why he's so highly rated.
Yeah, it should be an interesting one. Like you say, it's a step up of sorts, but yeah, Hutchinson, he looks in good shape. He's a really good prospect. Hasn't really been tested too much yet. Yeah, I'm sure he'll be looking to keep that run going and keep sort of dominating. But yeah, like you say, Scotland's next rising star. You hope. I'm sure you're watching him closely. What are your thoughts? Do you think he's going to be the next big thing for your countrymen?
I hope so. I mean, the problem with, well, it's a problem for everyone right now. No one's got any fans, but it's a shame that fans can't pack out these arenas. I'm not saying they come and pack them out for Willy Hutchinson right now because it's still early days, but if he could have been on, say, a Josh Taylor undercard, that would really have brought him through. But he certainly seems, he's very young as well. He's got so much time to just develop his potential. And really, this, having just said it's a bad sign, it could be a good sign. If he can notch up a couple of more victories over the next 3 or 4 months while we're still sort of in this pandemic, and then when we come out of it, be in a proper fight, say next summer back in Scotland, and really announce himself to the country. There's one thing we do very well, and that's get behind our fighters. We have Ricky Burns, of course, plenty before that, but Ricky Burns, and then now Josh Taylor and Willy Hutchinson. Give it a couple of years, he could well be leading the Tartan Army in voice. I wouldn't ask you to tell me too much about Fandino. As we said, he's fallen short when he stepped up, but I think the last time Hutchinson fought, it was a dreadful opponent, so I do think this is an improvement. That is all for our first live edition. I think we managed to get through it without offending anyone and without making any mistakes.
I didn't have to pronounce Derevianchenko this week. So
no, but you've done it just because you knew you had been practicing it, so you had to get it in just in case. Well, we'll give you that. If you want a gold star, we'll put one in the post. I will actually be back tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, with a quick recap of tonight's action, and then on Monday I'll be back with Declan Taylor and George Groves for our usual After the Bell show. If you are watching on YouTube, please do subscribe. There's going to be so many more new shows coming to Mirror Fighting in the coming weeks and months. You don't want to miss them. I know you don't want to miss them, Rich. Please do join us again tomorrow, Monday, and next week.